afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. It's Untethered Live on a Friday night, and I've got some goods for you tonight, buddy. It is Untethered Live, and I'm your host, Jake Johnson, and tonight I'm going to blow your mind. I'm going to blow it right at the top of your head. I've been thinking about it a while. I'm going to get it. I'm going to make you angry. I'm going to make you question the fabric of your moral fabric. Something. Anyway, Amanda, you get the gold star tonight. Amanda, give yourself a gold star. She says, hi, chat. Good to see you all. Hiya, Jake. How are you tonight, love? I'm fantastic. I'm ready to get sciencey on your ass. Kevin Cox, what's up, my brother? Good to see you. Hey, Amanda, here with the beautiful April. Hi, April. Good to see you, too. Amanda says, hi, Kevin and April. Y'all must be at Gators. Kevin says, nope, we are at Beef O'Brady's, which is right next door to Gators. I don't know. I'm not there. Amanda says, oh, switching it up, LOL. Kevin says, that's right, changing it up. Amanda says, beef is good, though. We'll enjoy. Well, enjoy. Well, enjoy. Kevin says, we will. Well, I hope you do. I hope you enjoy it. I hope that you get your belly full. I had a slice of pizza today. That's what I ate for dinner. And a honey bun. And this nice hot cup of coffee. And the letter P. And the number 42, which is the answer to the universe. It's the answer to the greatest question. You'll have to read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy to understand that joke, but there it is. And you know, I just realized something. Better? Even better. Can't believe I started a podcast without turning my lights on. Oh, Lord, not science. You don't like science? Everything that you do in the world you live in revolves around some form of scientific study. You don't like science? What's the matter? This world-shattering stuff boring you? Dimples, huh? Yes. I can't help it. My face is wrinkly. In a good way, though. So what's wrong with science? I mean, I could just skip all of that and talk about the movies. Or I could enlighten you. Which would you rather? Or at the very least, if I can't enlighten you, maybe I can cause you to think. Maybe that spark will go off between your noggin. Make you think about stuff. That's a good thing. What do you think, Kev? Think I should lay it on you or just not bother planning podcasts? It turns your brain to mayonnaise. You know why? Because this stuff ain't in it currently, but it will be after my little lecture. April says, hey, loves, good to see you all. Hey, April, how are you, sweetheart? Welcome to the show. Tonight's episode is titled Soul Rotisserie, Lunacy, a Scientific Inaccuracy. Can you guess what it's about? I'll give you a hint. I'm going to tell you something tonight that you have believed your entire life through no fault of your own. This is not your fault. You have been told this since the day you were born. You've been taught this by the scientific community. You have been given ample opportunity to have no thought whatsoever about taking for granted this fact. You just take it for granted because that's what everybody says and everybody you know believes it. But it's wrong. And if that's wrong, what else is wrong? Because this is a fundamental basic knowledge that everybody has. Fundamental. You cannot think about space without knowing this fact, and this fact is incorrect. So, I've been thinking tonight, not really. Amanda says, hi, April. Hun, much love. Kevin says, sports update. The South Dakota State Jackrabbits are beating the snot out of the University of Albany. Great Danes. Great nicknames. Go Dogs. Can't beat the Dogs. April says, LOL, Amanda. LOL, Kevin. Okay. So, Jake, you're hilarious. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So here's the thing. Back in the old days, way back, there was this fella that lived named Copernicus. And Copernicus was a churchgoer. He was a Catholic, good Catholic. And everyone there and everyone in the world believed in what's known as a geocentric model of the universe, meaning that the Earth is stationary and does not move, and everything out there revolves around it, and it, by default, by logic of reasoning, is in the center of all of this. That's what the prevailing thought was for hundreds of years. You look at any ancient cosmology, you read the Bible, it's all there, and it says it. The Earth is set on a pillar or pillars and is fixed and does not move. It is stationary. It hangs on nothing. That's scientific knowledge from the Bible. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what it says. Well, Copernicus had a secondary thought. And he expressed that thought and then immediately retracted it because the whole of the church tried to cancel him for using modern terms. They didn't like it. So he retracted. Well, about 100 years later, or however long it was, who knows how long it was, I'm not a mathematician. Sometime later, a new guy was in the mix, and his name was Galileo. And he had something Copernicus did not have access to, and that is a telescope. And he set it up in the town square and invited all the people to come take a look. Come take a look. And some people wouldn't even look into his machine because they were terrified that they may have to question their worldview. Some were eager to look. Some looked and were terrified at what they saw. But they all eventually looked. And not immediately, they condemned him, and he spent some time in the slammer. And they probably killed him for it. Who knows? But about 100 years later, they eventually caved and went with what he suggested, which is we don't live in a geocentric universe. We live in a heliocentric universe, meaning the sun is stationary and all of the planets in our solar system revolve around it. Well, as you know, if you do any looking into the stars, if you do any studying of the celestial beings and their movements, you begin to notice a couple things. They don't exactly all act the same way. Well, that's asymmetrical. And you can't have an asymmetrical universe if we're going with the theory of the Big Bang and the heliocentric model. So for the sake of simplicity, because the other way breaks all kinds of physical laws, physics, for the sake of simplicity, we apply, scientifically speaking, the heliocentric model to everything in the solar system. That's how we explain everything. And what does that mean? That means that we think about the movement of the planets the same way we think about the movement of the Earth in relationship to the sun. And this is the way science has progressed. Now, if you pick up any textbook, you'll find out that the moon, which, by the way, you should try comparing the moon to other moons in the solar system of other planets, and you'll immediately notice something jarring about that moon. And it is that it is way bigger in relationship to the planet than the other moons are. Way bigger. Almost like it's its own planet. Well, there's a good reason for that, because we live in a binary planet system. That's not a moon. That's a planet. Right? I'm losing you already, I can tell. No, Jake, it's a moon. It revolves around the earth. Well, funny you should say that, because the moon absolutely does not revolve around the earth. If you pick up a textbook, it will tell you that it does. If you read any scientific knowledge, you'll find out that the moon is caught in the gravity well of the earth for simplicity's sake. That is not true. That is incorrect. The moon revolves around the sun, and so does Earth. And these two things revolve around the sun together. Now, the moon is in what's known as a geocentric orbit, meaning that it does not move. It's stuck right beside the Earth like this. The Earth, if we believe science, rotates on its axis, and the moon rotates around the sun at roughly the same speed that the Earth does while it's rotating on its axis around the sun. Well, that can't be. I watched the moon come up in the afternoon and go down in the morning. Well, yes, from our perspective, because we are on a rotating Earth, that's what it would look like. Same thing the sun does, and it doesn't move. Heliocentric thinking. For years, we thought the sun comes up and the sun goes down. We even use that terminology when we're talking about it, but it doesn't. That's just what it looks like from our perspective. We are, in fact, going around it on its x-axis, meaning we go around it on its side, and we rotate as we go around it on our side. Well, 23.4 degrees. That's the angle of the axis of the Earth. Now, that's what causes our seasons, because some of the Earth is closer towards the sun than other parts of the Earth at different times, and that makes it hot or cold depending. So we have about 4 months of each, roughly speaking, at the equator. That's how it works. And the Earth is an oblate spheroid, according to science, which means it's fatter in the middle than it is at both ends. So it rotates like a discus almost. And the equator is the fastest part of it because it's sticking out the furthest. And it's also the hottest part of it because it's closest to the sun. All right. So you're thinking, that can't be right. The moon absolutely rotates around the Earth. I know you're thinking that, but you're incorrect. And this is how you can find out. Now that I've told you that, you're probably going to want to argue with me. You might even get mad at me for even suggesting it. But instead of doing that, just pull up Google and do a Google search of the moon from China, and the moon from Australia, and the moon from Antarctica, and the moon from North America, and the moon from South America, the moon from Canada. You will find out by comparing those photographs that no matter where you are on the circle of the globe, the moon looks exactly the same. Sometimes it's upside down, but it's the same face of the moon, because the face of the moon is always facing the Earth. Always. You never see the backside of it. You never see any other angle of it. It does go through phases because of the way we rotate around the sun, and the shadow of the Earth casts on it differently, causing it to go through phases. But it's not moving. It's moving around the sun, but it's not moving in relationship to us. So when you see these photographs and you wrestle with yourself and you inevitably come to the conclusion that you have been misled your entire life and the moon does not rotate around the Earth, and you feel like you need to apologize to me for being angry that I said something that you considered to be lunacy, don't apologize to me. Don't do that. Instead, just ask yourself one simple question. If I believed that, and that is something that science has told me from day one, and it's wrong, what else do I believe or take for granted that could be wrong? Just ask yourself to open up to the possibility that as your eyes are cracking open and the light is coming in for the first time ever, just ask yourself, what else might I be wrong about that I've taken for granted my whole life? Because everybody says that's the case. Everybody. Everybody can't be wrong, right? everybody used to say that everything in the universe rotated around the earth. Now, that's one side of it. Here's the odd part about all of this. The math works both ways. If you did the math, if you wrote down trajectories and angles and, equations and wrote out the math, it's the same math, whether that's true or whether we're going around the sun, because it all comes down to our perspective here on the earth, what we see from the ground. So it really doesn't matter if we're going around the sun or if the sun's going around us or whatever. It doesn't matter because it's the same both ways. A way you could illustrate this is to hold up a ball and then pull it away from your face real fast. And then put it back and then pull your head away from the ball real fast, but don't move it. You will find out that it looks exactly the same both ways because it doesn't matter which way the ball is moving away from your face. It doesn't matter which side of it's moving, your face or the ball. It's the same distance at the same speed. So you can't prove it by math, but you can look with your eyes and you can see it. Only one side of the moon faces the earth. How is that possible? Well, it is. So if the earth is rotating, and we all believe that, but we only ever see one side of the moon no matter where we are on the earth, what does that inevitably mean? Well, you can wrestle with it all night long. I've done it several nights in a row. It means that the moon isn't moving in relationship to us. It's staying in one place and we're moving. Or we're staying in one place and it's moving, one or the other. But for the sake of following science and assuming everything else is correct, I'm going to say that the moon does not rotate around the earth. It is not orbiting the earth. It does not obey the laws of orbital mechanics. That being said, neither does Mercury or neither does some of the moons of Saturn or Jupiter. Neither does Venus because it's on its side and rotates this way and not this way. Interesting that. How does that happen if everything is flung out from a disk in the middle? Because that's not how angular momentum works. If you don't believe that, find a merry-go-round. Get about 4 kids and put them on the merry-go-round and start spinning the merry-go-round. At first, the kids will be going faster, faster, faster. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you get a little faster and you call over a couple of football players to help you spin and it goes a little bit faster. Pretty soon the kids will get quiet. Why? Because they're holding on for dear life. They're starting to feel angular momentum. Well, if you add another football player and you get it spinning about 70 miles an hour, which is about how fast it takes for this to take effect, this unique thing to occur, all of the kids will all of a sudden fling off of the merry-go-round at the same time because they lose their grip. And one thing you'll notice, I want you to slow time down when this occurs and watch all of the children. They will all be twirling away in the same direction that the merry-go-round is spinning because that's angular momentum. It doesn't matter if they're going that way or that way. They will be going in the same direction. That's what angular momentum is. Well, if the Big Bang went poof and everything came out of nothing, and if the sun condensed from a gas cloud into a ball of fire and then exploded and caused the solar system, same laws would apply. So something's incorrect. The Bible says, God speaking, I use the wise among you to confound you with stupid things. I use stupid things to confound the wise. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the thing. Sometimes the simplest things will get you. And if you pay attention, open your eyes and watch the world around you, you begin to notice things. Sometimes they don't make sense and you have to think about them for a while or ignore them. Most people just ignore it, but sometimes you can't ignore it, like this soul lunacy. You can't ignore it because you see it every day. Pretty soon you got to ask yourself, what am I looking at here? Well, what you're looking at is a heliocentric solar system that operates sometimes in a geocentric way. That's what you're looking at. And God did that to screw with you. Simple. All right. April says, come on, people, hit the like button. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks. Welcome in, everyone. Yes, I can read. Kevin says, April put a gun to my head and said, hit that like button, bitch, or else. That's my girl. Get him, April. April says, Kevin just had a client call my phone who was in an accident. Won't know much about her grandbaby till tomorrow. That's horrible, April. I hope they're okay. Kevin says, Central Florida has a severe weather alert tomorrow. Hopefully, Juanita will not get blown away. Hopefully it will, or at least get cleaned up a little bit. April says, Kevin, never have I held anything to your head except for a mop. Terrifying. April says, yes, I'm praying for her. Recovery. Thanks, Amanda. I guess I skipped one. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Did I miss one? I guess not. Amanda says, you're welcome. Maybe I did miss one. Anyway, why am I talking about the sun and the moon tonight? Well, it just so happens that today we're having intense solar flares from the sun, and it's causing havoc amongst the people who use electronics. And I thought it apropos to speak about it today. That's what made me think about it. That's why you're getting this information dump. I don't know if that means anything to you or not, but just know, if you are like-minded and you have been told several things your whole life that you've taken for granted, some of them are incorrect by virtue of them people that told you learning from other people who got told by other people. And it's a vicious cycle. It's not that they were trying to deceive you. They don't know any better either. And it's not that you've done anything wrong, because you haven't. It's not wrong to believe what you've been told your whole life. What's wrong is not opening your eyes when you realize something isn't right. And that's what I'm trying to point out. Something ain't right with everything. So open your eyes and pay attention to the world around you, because you live in it and it affects you whether you believe that or not. And if you're going to live in it properly or happily, it would behoove you to understand the world in which you live. That's my philosophy. That's the way I've lived my life. Maybe it's the way you should live yours. Maybe it isn't. Who knows? Kevin says, there are 7 people on, but only 3 who have said anything. We know who the other 3 are. It could be. Could be them. They're probably busy. They're probably waiting to say, how crazy is he going to get tonight? Do I even want to involve myself in this conversation? Check me out, though. Don't take my word for it. Go look. Another interesting factoid about the moon, since we're talking about it. The largest amount of craters that are on the moon are all facing the Earth, for whatever that's worth. So did asteroids come towards the Earth and then turn around and go back and hit the moon? Did they come from the other direction, from the sun? Is that even possible? As far as I know, and I don't know much, but the asteroids that are careening through the solar system come from the asteroid belt, which is between Mars and Jupiter, which is on the opposite side of the sun. Except for that one that we don't really know, Oumuamua. We don't really know where that one came from or where it went, for that matter. It just kind of vanished. We were tracking it for a while, and now we don't know where it's at. Go figure. Well said, Jake. I agree, says April. Thank you, April. I don't know what you agree with, but I'm going to take it. So, one of the things that I've wrestled with in my life is squaring what I see with my eyes with what's written in the Bible. The Bible clearly states that the earth is fixed and doesn't move. It says it more than once. It also refers to it as God's footstool, which is if you've ever seen a footstool, it's like an ottoman. It's a flat plane on 4 pillars. That's what a footstool is. Do I believe the earth is flat? I believe, as far as I'm concerned, the earth is flat. But no, I think it has shape. And it could be that the earth itself is flat and the gas that surrounds it is spherical. I don't know. I've never been out there to watch it. And I don't trust the pictures that I've seen other people who claim to have been out there to watch it give, because they all look eerily similar and not in a good way. So, you watched that new Julia Roberts movie on Netflix. Whoa, that's all I got to say. Well, I don't know. I've heard some things about that movie, and they weren't good. And I've heard about a couple of people that were involved in making that movie, which would be the Obamas. And that's not good, because that movie has a political message, which also isn't good. But I haven't watched the movie. If it's any good, let me know. Kevin says critters on the moon are related to the Sasquatch family. They like to throw rocks, smell bad, and do podcasts. Well, I'm glad to see you guys are taking me seriously. So the thing is, I don't know. All I know is what I see. And what I see is what happens out there doesn't seem to line up with the Discovery Channel cartoons of what's happening out there. You might find that to be discomforting. That's what I was thinking. OMG, says April. Ha ha ha. Oh my God, Kevin. One thing I've found about the moon, though, I don't think it's a moon. I think we call it a moon, but I don't think that's what it is. I think it's a planet, just like this one. Only it doesn't have an atmosphere and it's much smaller. And it doesn't have life. And I believe it was put there for a luminary to light up the night. But it doesn't qualify as a moon. If you go look at other planets, look at their moons, they're much, much, much smaller in comparison to the planet. It's like a ratio kind of thing. Moons are satellites. They're little tiny things that orbit around the planet. Our moon is not a satellite. It rotates. It's a satellite, but not of Earth. It's a satellite of the sun. Just like Earth is a satellite of the sun. But we get the benefit of it, and we better hope it don't move. Now, I don't know what the calculations would be to move it. Anybody want to try that math? Be my guest. But my guess is it wouldn't take that much in comparison to the forces that are between the Earth and the moon already. A little bit this way, a little bit that way. The moon's moving away. It already is moving away, like 2 inches a year or something like that. Something ridiculous. It'll take 10 million years for it to separate and move off into space, according to science. I don't even know if that's possible. But it does beg the question, if it's moving away from us, if you turn that around and go the other direction, at some point it was much, much, much closer to us. That's a calculable. You can calculate that. So you can do a quick Google search and find out what the exact distance every year that it moves away. I think it's like 2 inches, but it might be less. But it is moving. in that direction. So turn that around and divide that by 253 million miles, which is how far it is away from us currently. And you can get a timeline on how long it would have been before the moon was touching the Earth. I'm not saying it was. I'm saying that that timeline can be hashed out, which would mean that at some point it was closer to Earth, but it wasn't that long ago. April says, yes, it had to do with the satellite in space. Weird. What did? Oh, the movie did. Okay, I didn't know that. All I know is that it was like a post-apocalyptic kind of movie that showed a lot of natural disasters or some such. And Julia Roberts is in it. And it has a political lean to it. And they use Teslas in the movie for some reason. I guess to make you scared of Elon Musk. I don't know. I wouldn't worry about it, though. I'm not worried about it because I'm never going to own a Tesla, but 1.5 inches in a year, which is roughly the rate of our fingernail growth, says Amanda. Interesting that natural things tend to grow like that. Anyway, if you did the math on that, 1.5 inches a year divided by 253,000, how many years would that be? That's the timeline for if the moon was touching the Earth when it started moving away, how long it would take to get to where it is now. I don't know that that's a thing, but it seems like there's some logic in there somewhere that if it's moving that way, it came from that way. April says, geez, what an eye-opener. Kevin Bacon is in it, but only has 2 scenes. It was very strange, intense movie. Interesting. Kevin says, it's cold and windy. 66 here in Lakeland. Get the heaters out and start a fire. Fire, fire. Well, it's much colder than 66 degrees here currently. And I have my heater on. And I have a hoodie on. And I'm still cold. Amanda says, and it's because of the gravitational effects they have on each other. Yes. Well, we know that the moon pulls on the Earth, which causes the tidal bulge, among other things. It also causes our weather and some other stuff to occur. So if it weren't there, that would be devastating to Earth for many reasons. We'd have no tide, for one thing. We may not be able to have a jet stream, or convection may not occur if the moon's not there. I don't know. I don't know what role it plays in those things, but it's possible that it does, because it definitely plays a role in the tide, and the tide plays a role on other things, including erosion and, the movements of certain fish and that sort of thing. OMG, 66 isn't cold, sissy. Ha ha ha. April says, and cars that drive by themselves, crashing into each other, everything crashing and a loud noise. Well, those cars were all Teslas. That was done to point out Elon Musk in a roundabout way, because Elon Musk is breaking some rules right now. And so they're trying to make him look bad. That's what that's about. That's part of that political leaning of that movie. It even says Tesla on the car. They didn't even bother to make it a different name like they normally do in movies. They pointed him out specifically. Right at the time that he's doing a recall right now because the autopilot function on those cars is malfunctioning, or it requires an update or something like that. So currently there's a recall on Teslas, and then they put that movie out. Kind of interesting that. You'll also notice that every Godzilla movie that's ever came out in the past, not including this latest one, occurred within a year of some nuclear catastrophe somewhere on Earth. Interesting why they would put that kind of movie out at that time when social anxiety is high about that subject. But seems interesting that they do that. I don't know that they are doing that, but it seems like they are. Seriously, OMG. Jeez. Yes, seriously. Movies have always been propaganda since they began. Same thing with radio. And anytime there's been a publication, it's been used for propaganda. Always. So be cautious of that. It's like in the 90s when all the alien movies were coming out. Now we're seeing UFOs everywhere. Amanda says, OMG, Kevin, I got the windows open. Well, let's see. And I can't see. I'll have to tell you later. Walter Davis says, good evening, all. Driving and listening. Hey, Walter, what's up, my brother? Good to see you, my friend. You made it while I was here this time. Fantastic. April says, exactly. Amanda says, hi, Walter. April says, Walter, good to see you, love. That's a thing that bothers me about the moon, though, is those asteroid strikes. All the craters, all of them. The lion's share of them are facing the Earth. There are a few in other places, but the majority of them face Earth. And also on Mars, only one hemisphere is covered with craters. The other hemisphere is not, and the one covered with craters is facing the Earth. Fab Daddy, what's up, my brother? Good to see you. I haven't seen it, says April. Well, look. The movie you just said, is that what you're talking about? Oh, it's 35 degrees here, and it's 65 degrees there. Uh-huh. That's about right. Happy Friday, Fab Daddy. Amanda says, hi, Fab. And April says, happy Friday, Fab Daddy. It's good to see you, love. We're talking about lunacy in general. We're talking about soul rotisseries and scientific inaccuracies. Think of it like Hawaii. One side desert, one side jungle. You can't think of it like Hawaii because nothing is growing on the moon and it's an inactive rock. It doesn't have volcanoes. So it can't be that. And also, asteroids are what cause craters, which don't come from the surface of the planet that they hit. They come from space and then hit the planet. My thought on the subject is, and this is just my opinion, I have no proof to back this up, I think the asteroids that struck the moon came from Earth during the flood. I think when the fountains of the deep broke open, it kicked a bunch of rocks up in the air, and it was such a force that it threw them towards the moon. And once they left Earth's atmosphere, they just kept going until they hit the moon, and probably Mars too. That's my thought. I don't know how right that is, but that's what I think. Fab Daddy says, hey, April and Kevin. Kevin says, hey, Fab Daddy-o. April says, LMAO. Fab Daddy says, windward side. Solar winds. Solar winds what? You're not hearing me. Solar winds don't cause craters. Solar wind is literally just electricity floating in the air, like static electricity in the opposite direction. Hawaii has a side with a desert, one with a jungle, and one is Pearl Harbor. That may be true. Push the asteroids to one side more than the other. That may be so, except for the fact that, as I said previously, the most of the craters are facing the Earth, and the Earth and the moon rarely have things go in between them. And if they did, they certainly didn't turn around and then head back towards the moon. but anything's possible. The asteroids could have came from the moon or came from the sun from that direction, went around the Earth and hit the moon. That could have happened. Except for the whole gravity thing, which they would have been stopped by the sun because it has way more gravity effect than the Earth does. And if they made it past the sun, they would have went into the Earth and not the moon. But if they made it past the Earth and the sun, maybe they landed straight in line with Earth on the moon. That's possible. Another thing you'll notice about those asteroid strikes on the moon, that most of them are round, meaning they hit straight on, not at an angle. Some of them did. There are a few that are oblong, but most of them are round, like perfectly round. April says, I'm confused. What are you confused about? Fab Daddy says, I believe it's a 200,000 year cycle dealing with galactic rotation, not solar. How do you think that? Who do you know that has been here for 200,000 years that could testify to that? Or is that just one of those things you take for granted because a book said it? Or because a professor said it? People like to throw around those numbers, but there's no logical way to know that. You can assume some things based on things you've witnessed. If you've seen something occur more than once, you can infer backwards that it's happened before, and usually probably at the same pattern. Nobody's ever seen that occur, let alone once. So how did you assume that it's a 200,000 year cycle? Space, the final frontier. Well, it's nice to know you're taking me seriously. Hit that like button, everybody. There's 7 people in chat and only 4 likes. Come on now, I'm working hard for my likes here. Kevin says, little short asteroids with hot flaming tempers are called April Rains asteroids. I agree. Hey, don't diss me on what I heard. I hear from you, but don't diss. I'm not dissing you. I'm asking you. I'm not at all questioning your ability to know things or making fun of you for claiming to know things. I'm asking how you came by that information. That was a legitimate question. I'd like to know because I hear numbers like that all the time, and my immediate thought is you can't possibly know that. How could you say that out loud? At least what I say, I think I have a reason to think that. I might be wrong, and I'll say that up front, especially if it's my opinion, and I do that often, but I tell you it's my opinion. I don't spit it out like it's fact. I have no way of proving it, but this is what I think. My question was, how do you know that? How do you know it's a 200,000 year cycle? What evidence would suggest that? April says, oh my God, LOL. I get the feeling you don't particularly want to have this conversation, April and Kevin. On a Friday night with nothing better to do. I'm happy to talk about movies. Kevin is Peacock, LOL. LMAO. He's peacocks, huh? April says, no, it's Kevin. Kevin's using April's phone, I see. He's saying stuff about me, LOL. I got you. We have mapped our galaxy from different angles, really. And this is a section that has many gases and mass. Where is this mass and gases? And who mapped our galaxy? The last I heard, we drew a picture of it because we assume it's a spiral galaxy. But until Cassini made its way and the two little Voyagers went out, they were the only thing that has ever left the solar system. And so they have spun back and taken pictures of the long side, the wide side of our galaxy, which still doesn't show its shape because we don't know that. But because most other galaxies are spirals, we think this one is. But it could be an elliptic. It could be any number of shapes because there are other ones out there that are misshapen, including some that are look like two galaxies smushed together like a figure eight. So we really don't know. That's a guess. That's the difference between scientific knowledge and scientific theory. It's a guess. They don't know that for sure. Every picture you've ever seen of our galaxy is a guess because we've never seen it. Gases are the stars, correct? As far as science has been able to determine, yes, stars are made up of different types of gases, and they do have a core, and they burn, but they don't know how they burn, and they don't know what they're burning. But there is a way that you can look at a star and take the light waves, and if you take the spectrum of light and lay it out flat, like on a piece of paper, and it shows all the different spectrums of light, there's little black lines in the light, and those black lines represent elements that are either there or not there. And based on those black lines on this array of different colored lines, they can assume what the star is made out of because of that's the signature for that element, right? So that's how they do that, and they guess. They don't really know, but it makes sense. And if they're correct in their assumption of what those black lines mean, then yes, stars are made of gases and burn. It's also possible that stars are nothing like the sun. They don't look anything like the sun, but we're looking at it up close and not across the universe, so we don't really know. It could be possible that the sun is not a star, but it also equally is possible that it is. I don't know. But make no mistake about it, everything involving outer space is a guess because no one, and I mean no one, has ever held a measure to it, and no one has ever been there. No one. So it's all theory, which is why we should be talking about it more instead of assuming we know everything, because we don't. We can tell movement. No, you cannot. If you'd have caught the first half of this podcast, you would have saw me lay out the case for the fact that the math is equally the same, whether you're moving or it's moving. It's the same math. So you don't really know. There's no way to know because it all comes down to what it looks like to us on this planet from the surface of this planet through the lens of our atmosphere, because nobody's out there looking at it. We do have things like the telescopes out there, the Hubble and the James Webb, which are seeing things, but they're trained for way, way, way far out, and they take in light, and they're looking at little tiny specks of the sky. But there are things that move. We just aren't sure how they're moving or which direction they're moving. But we can assume correctly or incorrectly that something is moving. We just don't know which one. Take a picture. Wait, take another picture. It shifts. That is true. That's very true. You can do that by looking at a train from a car. You can take a picture of the car from the train, and it'll look exactly the same. You could stand on the ground in between the train and the car and take pictures of both of them, and they both will appear to be stationary in the picture. But you can tell slight differences in one of them. Different kinds of stars, says Fab Daddy. Possibly. There are different kinds of stars. Kevin Bacon is STR. Does that mean he is made up of gas? Kevin Bacon is a star. Does that mean he's made up of gas? Most likely. April says, shut up, Kevin. Kevin Bacon is a star, is what that was supposed to say. I got it. Apparently, my phone hates Sir Bacon. There was a meteor shower the other night. Yes, it was. Now, where did those meteors come from? Do you know? There is a well-known field of micro-asteroids that has been rotating around the sun for thousands of years. And every so often, our orbit aligns up with them and we go through the tail of it. It's like a big swath of meteors. I forget the name of it now. It's been years since I've studied this, but it has a name and it's well known. And every now and then we run through it and we get pelted with little asteroids and they burn up in the atmosphere because they're too small to do anything. But they are not the same kind of asteroids that are in the asteroid belt, which is on the other side of Mars, between Mars and Jupiter. It's a different thing. So those, while they are asteroids, because anything that is floating in space that's not a planet is deemed an asteroid or a meteoroid or whatever you want to call it. I believe when it hits the atmosphere, it's a different name, meteoroid or whatever. But much like the comets that are in space, those things have been floating around for a long time. And they're interesting to watch. And ever so often we'll run through and destroy a few of them, but there's still thousands of them out there. April is like watching a shooting star, usually one per minute. April says, oh, wow, I wish I could have seen that, Fab Daddy. PY on B. Good night, Kevin, my love. Is he leaving us? Oh, I see it. Got to get up early. Night, Kev. Love you, buddy. Thanks for being here. Now, the asteroid belt that is between Mars and Jupiter seems to span the rotation around the sun. And it's basically just a broken up planet. There used to be a planet there. How do I know that? Well, if you go back to ancient Sumeria and see pictures of the solar system on the walls that they carved in relief, there's 10 planets and not 9. Well, how did they know? They didn't have telescopes. You don't know that. The idea came from somewhere. Maybe they had them. Who knows? They knew there were planets up there, so they figured it out somehow. But there were 10 of them. So there is 9 planets in an asteroid field. It stands to reason that that's a planet that broke up. I don't know that to be true, but it makes sense. Because those asteroids are different than the asteroids that hit the Earth regularly. Now, there's some bigger ones that have hit the Earth, like the one that hit in 1908 in Siberia, knocked down all those trees. That one was from the asteroid belt. Apparently, it got jostled out of place and flung inward towards the sun. That's interesting. I know you've heard this one, the Oort cloud. You ever heard of that? The Oort cloud was proposed by a guy named Oort because the question was posed to him, where did the comets come from? Because they're made of ice, and when they go around the sun, they melt, so they shouldn't still be there. If we've been here for billions of years, we should not still have comets. And so he proposed that outside of our solar system, somewhere, there is a cloud of comets called the Oort cloud. And every now and then, one of them will fling out of that cloud for some unknown reason and head towards the sun. No one has ever seen the Oort cloud. No one's ever seen evidence that there is an Oort cloud. We only know of 2 or 3 comets, and they come back periodically because they're in long orbit around the sun. That is a misnomer. That is a scientific inaccuracy. There is no such thing as an Oort cloud. That's just a theory somebody put out there, and you can't prove a negative, so nobody's disproven it yet until somebody. Oh, by the way, those 2, the Voyagers that I told you about who have left the solar system, when are they going to run into the Oort cloud? Surely they can take a picture of it. Interesting. They're entering into deep space, interstellar space, which, as far as you can tell, is nothing for a long way. I think we haven't found all the elements. That is entirely possible. There's 99 elements that we know of, and they're on a periodic table, and each one is cause of the one in front of it. So, if the Big Bang occurred, how did anything ever go past hydrogen on the periodic table? How do we get gold or lead, for that matter? Because there's no process out there anywhere by which these elements can be created. These are the base elements. They are there to start with. So, how did that happen? Because it would have had to come into existence. It didn't just, the whole universe exploded into existence, but nobody ever tells you where that stuff came from, because nothing begets nothing. Doesn't beget something. Interesting. Atomic mass, number of electrons. Are those questions? But you're right, it is entirely possible we have not discovered all of the periodic table. Some elements may be elusive, like element 113. One of the things that they're doing at the CERN Hadron Collider is looking for particles that may explain some things. They call it, quote unquote, the God particle, because they're looking for the thing that caused the Big Bang. They haven't found it yet, and they're not going to. But they're looking. Yes, that's how the periodic table is separated, by atomic mass and the number of electrons, correct. Or because the one below it came from the one above it. Why hydrogen is 1. Yes, how did we get past hydrogen? How did hydrogen turn into anything below it? For that matter, how did hydrogen get there? Where did it come from? What is it made of? What is beyond it? This is what's known as the philosopher's stone, more commonly referred to as turning baser metals into precious metals. That's what it began as, but it has implications reaching all the way back. The philosopher's stone is a method by which you can turn, say, lead into gold. They've been looking for that, and some claim to have found it at some point in history, but there's no proof of that. Isaac Newton was looking for it, the guy that's responsible for a lot of the science that we parrot back and forth towards each other today. That guy was definitely involved in alchemy and looking for the philosopher's stone, and was also a devout Christian and believed in God. Just thought that was interesting. Started with Midas's touch, alchemy and testing. Well, no, Midas's touch is based on the philosopher's stone. That was what his touch was for. And Midas's touch is a myth based on philosopher's stone, based on alchemy. Yes. It's very interesting how thousands and thousands of years ago they were thinking about these kind of things that scientists are claiming to come up with today, yet you can go back and read it in the Bible, for example. Same thoughts were being had, thus proving that mankind has always been intelligent and always been curious. Unlike science would have you believe we started out as cavemen, grunting and hitting people over the head with clubs, and progressed into the enlightened man in a straight line upwards. But that's not the case. Not at all. That's also a scientific inaccuracy. Whether or not evolution is true, which it isn't, you can look at it any time any scrutiny is put to it at all, it falls to pieces. But whether it's true or not, the fact that we started out dumb and got smart is not true. Jake turns YouTube golden. You got the Midas touch, says Fab Daddy. Well, thank you, Fab Daddy. Absolutely down in history, says April Rain. I'm trying. I'm working hard. I wish I was turning YouTube into gold. I could probably pay my land taxes then. I'd be in Florida right now. Anyway. I'm like turning it into pewter. That's probably better. But thank you for the compliment. Or the sarcasm, whichever way you meant it. So, there are a few questions that I have about everything. Evolution, not of people, of stuff. Because I already don't believe in the evolution of people. I already think that's nonsense. But I do believe in cosmic evolution. I do believe that some things have to evolve into what they are by the process of time and the law of thermodynamics and entropy and all of that stuff. I think that those things cause some things to become other things. But I don't think it causes them to become different things, just more worn out versions of their first thing. So cosmic evolution probably most definitely occurs because we have the elements. How did we get the elements? Where did they come from? What makes the elements? Nobody knows. Nobody questions it because they don't want to answer it. Because the answer is they came out fully formed and here to start with. And the only way that can happen is if God put them here. And nobody wants that question answered in academia. So nobody's looking real hard. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, there's no mechanism by which an egg can evolve from anything lesser than an egg. There's no material that evolves into an egg. You have to have a chicken first, fully grown and ready to lay an egg with a partner. It has to have somebody to marry. You have to have a pink one and a blue one, as Kent Hovind would say. In my opinion, my humble opinion, that's all the proof I need. Clearly, something higher than me put all of this into action. Whatever that higher thing is God. Stars create elements. Prove it. And I don't mean find some scientist that'll say it. I mean, prove it. Show me a star creating some elements. Show me a chunk of gold that fell from the sun. Show me an image of a star creating anything other than light. For that matter, take a good look at the star nursery that's up there, you know, the Crab Nebula, and explain to me when you see a star form what you're seeing, because no one's ever seen a star form, ever. We've seen stars appear that weren't visible before that, but they don't go anywhere. They don't move. The same stars that have always been there are still there because they're not making stars. They're just stars in front of the nebula. Nebula is a cloud. That's it. It doesn't do anything. Hydrogen burns to helium and then heavier elements. Okay. It's easy to say that, but you're not saying anything because you can burn all the hydrogen you want. You can burn it any way you want. You might get a byproduct of helium or something else, most likely air, because hydrogen is made of oxygen and water, or the elements. Anyway, but you're never going to get a chunk of gold to come out of that. You're never going to get a piece of lead to fall out of it. You're never going to get any of the other elements to come from it. Never. So explain to me how that process works. Give me some facts, some science. Science the shit out of me. Tell me what I'm missing. Gold isn't flammable, by the way. You can melt it, but it won't burn. Yes, you will. Yes, I will. What? No, you won't. No, you won't. Prove it. Get some hydrogen and burn it and show me. I don't have enough time. Well, let me save you the time. There are cars that run on hydrogen. Hydrogen is made from water by splitting the water molecules. Half of it turns to vapor, the other half turns to hydrogen. Cars run on hydrogen, some of them, and they have filling stations for hydrogen. So find one, go to it, fill up a jug of hydrogen, take it home, pour it out on the ground and catch it on fire, which is exactly what would happen if you burned it any other kind of way. And then take the gold that you get from it and go buy a car. You can't, because it won't. I'm sorry. If that were true, then there would be a side job for every hydrogen filling station. There'd be another component that collects the gold until it became tangible, even if it just makes microscopic gold. You're telling me that they frack for oil, but they wouldn't do it for gold? Think about that. You can burn hydrogen. Can you burn hydrogen? Not without oxygen. True, because hydrogen and oxygen come from the same elements. You have to have one for the other to burn. You need two things for something to burn. You need oxygen and you need fuel. The hydrogen is the fuel. It don't have any oxygen in it because it was already split away from the oxygen when you made the hydrogen. So you have to add it back into it, which makes it flammable. Same thing works with carbon. Same thing works with coal, which is carbon. See? And a diamond is a really burned piece of coal because it's very carbon and then polished. I digress. No. Two things. What's the third thing? Spark isn't a thing. You're doing that. Obviously. You got what I meant. The spark is the fire. You're just adding fire to it. April says, LOL, trash. What's trash? Oh, to burn? Yeah. You need trash to burn. Yeah. So, as I was saying, if you could get other elements from burning elements, there would be stations outside the filling stations to collect those things, and there's not. No fire without it. That's true. That's true unless you consider electricity to be a contributor to fire, because that will cause a fire too. Or friction, which can heat up and cause something to burst into flames. Or any number of other ways you can start a fire. But yeah, spark probably works the best. plasma. Let's not forget about that. Chemical reaction. Let's not forget about that. There are some chemicals that become volatile when they come in contact with other chemicals and cause fire. Then there's the sun, and I'm fairly sure nobody's took a bic up to the sun and struck it. So clearly something caused that fire that wasn't a spark. Rubbing sticks together is friction. Good, April. That's science. Friction causes heat, and heat will eventually catch on fire. You can make rubies in your microwave. I've heard this. A magnifying glass in the sun. Very nice. That's magnification. There's a thing, I don't know what that is. Heat. That's heat. It's magnified heat, which is the same thing that happened to the sun. It got so heavy that it became hot. Just like if you have a pile of sawdust and the center of it gets hot, that's the sawdust reacting to the pressures, right? And then eventually that will start smoldering, and eventually it'll catch on fire if you let it sit long enough. But it could be 2 or 3 years. I've heard of people finding fire in the midst of their grain silos after years and years and years of having grain stored in them. Yeah, I've heard that you can make certain elements in your microwave like rubies. Not elements, but certain stones. But I don't know how. I know that you can add heat and pressure to coal and it will eventually become a diamond if you add enough of it for a long enough period of time. Wow, says April. And I think they figured out how to do that, because I'm pretty sure they're selling synthetic diamonds now on the market. They all have to be marked, of course. Wink, wink. But I think that they're making diamonds in laboratories now, so they figured that one out, I think. Fat Daddy says it requires plasma like the sun and positive ions arced across the negative ions. And positive ions arced across negative ions. That would be a short circuit. That was the spark to start the sun. Was it now? See, I thought it was nuclear fusion caused by gravitational pressures, but I'm no scientist. And that's when an atom throws off the ion, thereby making it volatile. That's not technically a spark, but it does cause a spark. But that was my point. There's more than one way to skin a cat besides uglying him to death. And I probably said fusion and I meant fission. Because again, I'm not a scientist. Just an amateur thinker. Of course, what is a scientist? Does anybody know? Is there a requirement for scientist? Or scienti? Can you have scienti? I can't spell, says Fab Daddy. I hear you, brother. I hear you. Me too. Me too, Jake, says April. Does anybody know what makes a scientist? I know you probably think degree, right? No. There are scientists that have no degrees. One of them would have been Charles Darwin. Another one would be Bill Nye the Science Guy, both of which have degrees, but not in science. Bill Nye has a degree in engineering, and Charles Darwin had a degree in, wait for it, drum roll please, theology. Charles Darwin was a spoiled rich kid that wouldn't work and wouldn't raise his family, so his parents sent him off on a last-ditch effort to get him a job on a boat and to get rid of him. And while he was on that journey, he read Huxley's book and decided to look at some finches on an island, the Galapagos Islands, and discovered that some of the finches had long beaks and some had short beaks and some had pointy beaks and some had rounded beaks, and assumed they must all be related to broccoli. Whoa. Based on that criteria alone. And in his book, The Origin of Species, based on favored races, or some such, they don't say the last part of that because it's racist. Anyway, in that book, he says that if any of these questions are answered, my theory falls apart on its face. And the reason he said that is discussing the eyeball and its complexity and knowing that it didn't evolve from something prior to it. And if anybody could answer it or did not find some intermediary species with a lesser eyeball, that his whole theory would fall apart. Keep in mind that when he wrote that theory, they thought that a cell was a blob of gelatinous goo. They had no idea what was happening inside of a cell. They had no idea the complexity that's more complex than any computer ever designed by man in one cell. It's like a city working in unison, reading RNA and DNA and mRNA and all that stuff, or whatever the hell it is, doing all these different things, making sure that the cell does what it's supposed to do. They didn't know any of that. They couldn't see any of that, which is why dumb theories like his was allowed to propagate in the first place. Shortly after which, they discovered that there's no way this could be real, but it had already taken hold, and they were already trying to remove God from academia, so they let it fly. And it became the problem it is today, which is in most people's minds, especially academic people's minds, mostly academic people's minds, and it's been an argument for the last 200 years. And guess what? It's not right. Some of the things that are taught in textbooks today, like if you go to the school today and grab a science book, you will see drawings from Ernst Haeckel in that science book. And Ernst Haeckel went to prison and lost his doctorate because he made fraudulent drawings of embryos. He went to prison for that. And yet they're teaching it today. And it's not right. He made it up. He recorded a lot of information, says Fab Daddy. Did he now? What information? Well, I'm assuming you're talking about Charles Darwin. No, he liked bugs. And he recorded a lot of bugs information. And he made some observations. He did not discover anything. Not even a new species. Darwin recycled his uncle's theory exactly of why the Irish were the least developed race of mankind. Because in those days, they thought of Irish people lower than they thought of black people. They were apes. Now, if you read the entire name of Darwin's book, it alludes to that in the title. It says something about favored races. I can't remember now, but favored meaning white people. I'm sorry, Darwin was a moron, and everything he said was from his uncle, the other Darwin, and Aldous Huxley, or whatever his name is, Alvin Huxley. Who actually came up with the theory of evolution, but Darwin made it famous. He used animals as examples. Yeah. Well, he arranged animals as examples. The problem with that is you can arrange anything from small to big. That doesn't mean that it came from the small thing. You can arrange a skateboard and a bunch of car parts and a Yugo, and then you can say, look, this skateboard evolved into a Yugo. But that's not how it really works. You can arrange a spork into a fork by putting a spoon and a knife in between the two. But they didn't evolve. And the lug nuts from a Dodge Charger will fit on a Ford Ranger. But the Dodge Charger did not evolve into a Ford Ranger. I probably got that wrong. Don't say anything, Walter. The point remains the same. I just don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, you guys are awesome. There's some very interesting things happening in this world. Mostly because the Irish were pissed off that their land was taken to pay the Cromwell's department from his revolution, even though he had no right to it. Yeah, there was a lot of hostility towards the Irish right on up into the cowboy and Indian days in the 1800s. That was still going on. It's kind of went by the wayside now because the black people took over and they got it for a little while. But before the black people, it was the Irish people. Fab Daddy says, yes, and you can use a 22 round to bypass a fuse. True. But that don't mean that the fuse evolved from the 22 round, though, does it? Or that they're related in any way. So you already possess the knowledge to discredit evolution. You just haven't applied it yet. Here's a thought. How come if my dog dies and I don't touch it, in about 2 weeks it'll be gone? And I will never find its fossil out there, ever. The answer to that is because it takes a very particular thing to create fossils in the first place. They don't just happen. They have to be covered over while still alive with sediment-rich mud and then cut off from oxygen and then covered over by water, salt water to be exact, so that no erosion or decay can occur. Because if they're dead already, they've already begun to decay and then they'll just decay underground. But if they're covered over and cut off from oxygen before the decay begins, they don't decay. They just stay there, preserved in salt water. And then eventually that sand will turn into limestone, and that limestone will turn into rock. And then the sediments that were around it will eat away at the bones until there's nothing left of the bone and sediment takes its place, and that is a fossil. Question: how are they finding red blood cells that are still spongy in fossils? They call them fossils because bones don't last for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. But they're not fossils because if they were, they wouldn't have red blood cells in them. They would have sediment in them in the shape of red blood cells, but not blood cells. The reason they're finding blood cells is because they're finding bones. Some fossils, some bones. And this is not information that they wanted to discover, by the way. They checked it 17 times, and also some of those people lost their jobs for discovering it, yet they discovered it, and now they have to admit it. And it is taking the scientific community and paleontology specifically by storm because they don't have an answer. Well, I have an answer. It's because dinosaurs and people lived at the same time, and it wasn't that long ago. A few thousand years. Simple. They're not billions of years old or millions of years old. They're thousands of years old. And some of them existed right on up until a few hundred years ago. Not many of them. Not the big ones, but some of them did. Irish uprising lasted until the 2000s, says Walter. I don't doubt that. There's been a lot of things going on over there. A lot of that. What's that religious thing that's been going on over there? Is it? It's not the IRA, is it? Is that what it's called? Something. One of those. It's Irish religious stuff. I'm not exactly sure. It has something to do with the church, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. But they've been fighting for years, and every now and then they have a flare up. Absolutely, says April. Yes. And they all came from the moon. And that's how we're going to end the podcast. You guys have been awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I love each and every one of you. Will you please hit that subscribe button and press the bell icon so you get notifications of when I'm going to be online? Smash that like button. It's right in front of you. It really does help the channel with the algorithms, helps us get recommended to other people. Won't you do that, please? Share this video with somebody you love. Better yet, share it with somebody you don't love. Bring them into the family, make them part of the fold. Be part of their solutions, not part of their problems. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you're thinking. Question me, curse me, bless me, challenge me, confront me, conform with me, drink my Kool-Aid, make your own Kool-Aid. As long as you're thinking critical, that's what I want. Critical thought coming from that brain of yours. And hey, if you dig what you're hearing and you'd like to hear more, if you'd like to help out, if you'd like to support this channel, or if you'd like to just pat me on the back and say, hey, good job, Jake, I got you back. You can do that. You can support my work by going to paypal.me/JakeJohnsonBand, paypal.me/JakeJohnsonBand. Or if you're a Cash App user, you can go to $JakeJohnsonBand, $JakeJohnsonBand. Every little bit helps. It's a win-win. It's a blessing to me. It's a blessing to you too, because we live in a reciprocal universe. It rotates around the sun. Anyway, have a great night. God bless you all for being here. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble on and prattle on about things nonsensical to most, but poignant to others. And we will do some serious talking on Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Untethered Live. We'll get into some serious Bible study and see what it has to say about the world we live in. Fab Daddy says, have a great weekend. Thank you. You too. Walter says, it's the Irish Republican Army. Sinn Féin is the political wing. Irish Republican Army, Sinn Féin is the political wing. Okay. April says, woohoo, yay. Much love, Jake. Thank you, April. Amanda says, see y'all Sunday. See y'all Sunday. Good night. Interesting night, Jake. Thank you. My brain is mush again. LOL. I aim to please. I only wish that you aim to please. Walter says, take care all. Thanks, Jake. I'll call you tomorrow. Okay. Cool. I was going to call you today, but I got sidetracked and forgot about it until just now. I meant to call you today. I was thinking about calling you today, but I'll talk to you tomorrow. April says, have a great week ahead, everyone. Hit that like button, subscribe, share, and support Jake Johnson. Good? Nope. God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Any questions, criticisms, comments, catharses, catastrophic catalogs, conundrums, Carpathianisms? No? We still got 1 minute. Now's the time, or forever hold your pieces. Spread your little wings and fly, my bird. Much love, sweet dreams, says April. Thank you. You too. Hope you guys had a good night tonight. All right. I'm going to go to bed. Too funny. I don't know. Well, I'm glad it was funny. Peacock. Is that Kevin again? Kevin. LOL. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you for watching. God bless you. Sweet dreams. I love you, true. Thanks for watching.